I'm gonna press record. Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Rena Yudkowsky. We are live in Facebook. And I want to thank you for joining us. If you are joining us live, wait, I'm hearing the kickback from Facebook. One second. I just got to go into Facebook and silence this. Okay, if you are joining us live, please say hello. And so we know you're here and put live in the chat. If you're watching the replay, please type in replay so we know that you're watching the replay. So let us know you're live. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'll be checking the chat if there are any questions, and I'll bring them up while Aviva's talking. It is my pleasure to welcome you. We are going to be talking with Aviva Yoselis of Healhtadvize, and Aviva has a lot of good experience and wisdom to share with us about cognitive loss, memory loss, how to help our loved ones that are going through that. And she does the things that I don't like to do, the bureaucracy stuff. I hate that. So it's really good that we all love to do different things, because I like to do the more clinical stuff and talking about memory. She likes to do the more bureaucratic stuff. And that's the stuff that drives me crazy, but she helps people in so many amazing ways. And we're going to hear more about that today. So welcome. Thanks for joining us. If you're watching us live, if you're watching us watching the replay, write replay. And welcome, Aviva. How are you?
Thank you. I am so excited. I have to tell you that I have been hearing your name for years, and people like, you have to speak to Rena. Why do you speak? And it was like this mythical figure out there. You have to speak. And when we finally connected, I was, oh, here she is. So I feel like this conversation is a long time coming, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, also, a few people have told me to hook up with you, and it just took us some time to hook up, but I'm glad we did, because this is a great collaboration.
Completely.
And
you would think such a small country, it wouldn't be so complicated, but somehow.
Exactly. So we're both in Israel. That's why we're doing it at 10 o'clock in the morning, but people all over the world can watch this later, so it'll work. The replay will be right here in the Facebook group, and Aviva will share it with her people, so everyone will get to see it.
Yeah.
So Aviva, tell us a little bit about, who you are, what you do, how'd you get into this? Share.
I would love to share. So as you hear from my accent, I live in Israel, but I'm actually originally from South Jersey in the States. And I have been in the field of public health since the start of my career, so over 30 years.
Wow.
I worked in North Philadelphia and made Aliyah about 26 years ago. Mm-hmm. And for the past about 10 years, I would say at this point, I've had this business called Healhtadvize, where I help people navigate the healthcare system and advocate for them, and hopefully also empower and educate others how to advocate for themselves in the system, so that they can move forward eventually without me. And so I try to explain to people I don't do case management. My goal isn't, long term. My goal is to really come in, help people resolve those technical bureaucratic issues that you mentioned, a lot of communication issues with doctors, with other healthcare providers, to help them move forward through whatever it is, sort of the log jam that they're experiencing. So my background actually is in public health. I have a master's degree in public health, spent a lot of years in research, health promotion, health education. And on a personal level, so I'm the mother of 5, and each one of my kids had some health issue that I had to navigate through in Israel. And then now for the past, I brought my parents over in Aliyah 5 years ago. My mother has Alzheimer's dementia. And my father is about to be 90, but it's amazing.
Wow.
He just told me yesterday he's tired because he walked 6 miles.
6 miles?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
He's amazing. But he lives with me also. So, so I tell people that I have the professional experience and knowledge, but I also have the personal journey
Yeah.
So
That's
I get it.
valuable. That's very
Yes.
valuable. And you can help people a lot because you really understand what people are going through.
Exactly, exactly. And that's, that's what I tell people. And the reason that I've really, started focusing much more on the issue of memory and navigation is because also of my own personal experience, also because of the research that I was involved with in terms of aging and services available to those with dementia, but also because what I encountered, because when until we got my mother diagnosed, and until we got through the process, and until we learned everything, it was ridiculous that we should have had to have done that with no guidance and etc. And I'm somebody who was already knowledgeable. I knew the questions to ask. I knew how to push forward. So, people who don't have that background, it's unfair. It's an unfair burden for the person and the family, I think.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit about memory loss and how do people know when they should get help and where should they turn first? And what do you want people to know? Like, what do you wish you would know that you can share with other people?
Exactly. So, and I'd like to also ask you the question again, because I think you also should, be the expert on what's abnormal versus nerves, because we all, there is a level of memory loss that is connected with age, and they call it, sort of normal, whatever, cognitive, and that's important for us to know,
I'll address that. I'll address that afterwards. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. But I think the first thing is that often what happens with people is it's not the individuals themselves who notices, but it's also those around them, the spouse or the adult children or close friends. And every once in a while, I will see a case where the person themselves takes themselves and they say, like, I'm experiencing this. But for the most cases, my clients, it's their family members who have turned to me or turned to others. Yeah. So this is really a tricky point, but what I tell people is, in a sense, don't waste your time going to providers who are not experts. Because if you're going to go to a family doctor who doesn't have experience with this, you're going to say memory loss, and they're going to whip out, this exam called the mini mental state exam, which is like a issue of questions to ask you, like spell world backwards. Basically, like, the person has to be so far down the ladder of memory loss in order to score a point that would move them, that most people who are experienced this are not going to get. Right. So that is my first point, is go to an expert right away. If the person you're worried about is older enough, go to a geriatrician who's got experience. Right. If you've got private insurance, I would seek out a memory clinic like they have in in Shaare Zedek in Jerusalem, they have, or a private provider. I know in the States, when we made that mistake, we went to a run-of-the-mill neurologist who shouldn't have been doing that, in my opinion. And then the next level, we went to a memory center where they have a full comprehensive doctor and a nurse and a physical therapist, because there's so many issues that can be causing this. Right. So, I think that it's worth the investment to have a full comprehensive where they can really hone in on what the issue is. Right. I think a lot of people also are under the mistaken impression that if I do an MRI or I do a CT, I can see right away if it's something, if it's Alzheimer's, if it's dementia, I can see the problem. And what you can rule out is, God forbid, a brain tumor, or, a stroke that wasn't identified, or something much more, severe, especially in younger people. Yeah. So, for sure, anybody who's under 60 who's experiencing these kinds of things immediately should do an imaging through a neurologist, because it can be caused, through other things that aren't dementia related. Right. We also have the complicating factor now of COVID, long COVID, and COVID brain, which is so complicated. I was going to do a webinar on it, and I was trying to find a doctor who would talk about it. We tried, I think we reached out to 3 different doctors. They didn't want to talk about it because they didn't feel they understood it enough. I do know there are COVID clinics, but when you were talking about trying to figure out what's going on, this just puts more complication into the puzzle. It does. And you're right. I had a couple clients who needed to know about long COVID, whether or not what they were suffering was And I tried to make an appointment. They go, they have breathing issues? No, no, no. Okay, so then we can't help them. It was like,
Really?
yeah, yeah, yeah. They couldn't, they're still, stuck in sort of, I mean, in that model. There is research coming out. Just read a study in JAMA yesterday, the day before, which really looked at, and we know that we're seeing more incidences of Parkinson's and stroke, and as a result of long COVID. The foggy brain, it's a problem because there are so many other issues out there that can cause it, because you have to sort of distill, other confounding factors. So it's going to be a long time, I think, before we have specifics about long COVID, and for sure treatment and intervention,
Yeah. So,
So
okay, so let's go back to what you do. So when people are trying to figure out what's going on with their loved one, do you help them find the right doctors? Do you help them find the right resources? Do you help them find caregivers? Like what is your piece?
yes. So ideally, I would love if somebody came to me, when they're right in the stage of, I think we need to get this evaluated, because then I can jump in at the beginning. We can find the right provider. Yes, that's for sure something that I do. Make sure that we get the comprehensive summary. And then we look for what are the resources. So if we're living in Israel, and they're eligible for Bituach Leumi, which I just want to point out is that I tell people Bituach Leumi has a financial and a medical criteria. So just because you meet the medical criteria doesn't necessarily meet the financial. But I want to urge people, because I have more and more clients who are making Aliyah, and they're just supported by their Social Security, in America. They're not coming over with pensions, etc. So they may very well be eligible for Bituach Leumi benefits. So that's important. And you can get help and care with just a cognitive decline diagnosis. Amazing. So which is important to also note, and you don't have to be also physically frail or having physical, if you're at the point where you need somebody to be checking up and sort of having a presence and helping you. I think that's what people don't realize. I think we say memory loss and people are like, I forgot my keys, or, I forgot where I went to the refrigerator, which we've talked about is a real thing, and we want to deal with it. But one of the first things to really go when somebody is suffering from a dementia, especially Alzheimer's related dementia, is the executive function, is the complicated decision making. Like I saw with my mother, it was, we're gathering more information. Like they really needed to sell the house and move out. And my mother had always been the decision maker. So my dad always looked to her, and she kept saying, we're gathering more information. We're about to make a decision. And you see that, I have a client now who finally hired me. Her daughter, like they needed me months ago. She couldn't somehow, that the jump to leap to the decision, we don't realize how many different things go into that process,
I know.
So those are the kinds of red flags that people need to be, somebody who used to be able to make those decisions and now is sort of like thrown, by those things. Or, like my mother who bought a cruise online, that was, for my father was when he took away the credit card. Yeah. I mean, and that's a real danger, especially for older people who are living alone. And I think in COVID really emphasized that, because people are so much more isolated, and they were isolated. Yeah,
very much so, and isolated, and there's a lot of cognitive decline happened because they were isolated. They weren't physically active, they weren't socially active, they weren't cognitively active, and
yeah,
a lot of people complaining about cognitive decline. It's COVID really did.
I think we're going to see in the next few years a leap in the number of people who are really suffering and who are going to need, who are sort of entered in early into the world of dementia. They were sort of catapulted in because of Corona.
Yeah. Can you talk for a minute? I'm curious to hear about this, because I've been hearing that, I think this is true in different countries, like in several different countries, that the caregivers, meaning that loved ones, the family could be paid to be a caregiver, right? Has that become more popular and available? That I think it's like the family's anyway doing the care, so why not pay them instead of hiring a caregiver?
Completely. This has been a discussion in Israel for a long time. Right now, there are certain towns that they're doing like a pilot where not children, but other relatives. So, for example, grandchildren, nieces and nephews, cousins can be paid to be caregivers. It hasn't hit Jerusalem yet. It hasn't been like countrywide, but it's going to get there.
Oh, so it's city by city right now?
Yeah, right now it's area. Yeah.
And
but not children, which unfortunate, but
what about in America? Is that true in America?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I know in America it all works through an agency. I do know somebody, you know, that's a good question. I don't know.
Okay. I think I have to ask the people in the field there. Yeah, we're not.
For sure. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not updated enough.
Okay.
I mean, I understand why they don't do that, because they don't want people to take advantage. You know, there's a fine balance between protecting the older person and I feel like sort of and handicapping the family in a way, you know?
Right.
So
okay, so the first step that you like people to do is like to do an early assessment, figure out what's going on.
Exactly.
And then do you help people sort of figure out what the needs are and put like certain either legal things in place or financial things in place?
Exactly. Yes. So then the next step that we do after we get the assessment is an assessment between ourselves. So it's the person, either the spouse and or a child who's going to be involved. Hopefully, not everybody has that, you know.
Right.
But yes, then I encourage people very much to do durable power of attorney if they have, because that, in a sense, sets up the process so that if and when you can no longer make a decision for yourself and you get to determine who defines that, which is also helpful. Right. Then it's already set up and you don't have to go to court to determine a guardian.
Right.
Because I will tell you that it is a gut-wrenching experience for an adult child who has to take their parent to court and basically say that you are incompetent, especially when a parent is in such denial, because they're often, as things get worse, there's more and more denial. And then it is. So you don't want to get to that position. What happens often is that they don't take their parent to court to get guardianship. And then their parent basically is unable to manage, but there isn't anybody in a legal place, which is crucial. And I want to tell people this is that, like, a lot of people assume that, okay, well, if we're in a crisis, if we're in the hospital and they have to do something, they'll just let me make the decision because they know I'm her daughter or I'm her husband. It does not work that way, especially in second marriages, which we're seeing more and more.
Yeah.
And especially if it's not like, if it's an emergency, but not like seconds emergency.
Right.
If you do not have legal documentation in place, you will be in a big, big problem.
Okay, so that's very important.
It's very important. That's why I tell people as early as you can in the process, have a legal document, and today there's and I recommend lawyers. I have no financial relationship with the lawyers. I recommend people I have personal experience with, who speak English for my clientele. But people have done this, in the States. And also important to note that if you do it in the States, does not carry over to Israel. A lot of people have done this work already in America, and they just assume that it'll be but the courts here will not recognize an American document.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's also important to know.
Yeah. So a lot of people who come over at an older age, they should just know you have to redo it here.
And then what about family members that really, they don't know much about dementia, or they really, let's say they get a diagnosis and then it's like, now what? So like, how do you help them either accept it, work, coach them through it? I mean, do you do that yourself? Do you send people to someone else?
So that's an excellent question. So in these cases, I actually team up with a medical coach. She does much more of the acceptance of the process with the family. We sort of tag team, because that's I help people break it down. I help people, I say to the children, okay, these are the next 10 steps. I can do them, you can do them. Everybody's different in terms of what they want to do, their level of comfort, their level of Hebrew, their level of familiarity, etc. But so I help them with those steps. But I also like encourage them, either they work with a medical coach or they have a support group, or much more of that therapeutic, because it's a process and you need that kind of emotional support.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I so agree with you. So
Yeah,
agree
yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Look,
and
and
then
it's
what?
painful. It's
Very,
it's a
very.
painful process, and I think
Yes.
that you have to give space for both. You have to
Yeah.
do the logistics. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people kind of like put their blinders on and they don't want to do that. But you also have to do the emotional work,
Right.
you really
And
do.
that's why, and they're intertwined, but that's why if some people could come to you and you take that load off of them, of all the logistics and the technical and the bureaucracy, then that's like a huge sense of relief for people.
Exactly. I feel that like that allows them then to focus
Right.
on all the emotions and the other work.
And if people, they get to the point where they have to move their loved one to either an assisted living or a home or find a better living arrangement for them, do you also walk them through that process, and do you know the places and help them figure out the right place?
Yes, completely.
Okay.
We do an analysis, but I always ask people, and one of the conversations that I always try to have in the beginning is, where do you see yourself? Do you want to be at home with a full-time caregiver? Do you want to be in a community setting? It really depends on their resources.
Yeah.
It depends on their children, but yes, I help people either do the process for a full-time, live-in caregiver, which thank God in Israel is much easier than it is in America.
Yeah.
In America, it can be, almost impossible. Whereas here, that's what a lot of people choose, because it's actually a cheaper option than a private, nursing facility. But
I'm just checking the comments. I'm going back and forth on my windows to check that there are no comments.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
If anyone has any questions, there are people on watching. So if people have questions, please put them in the chat and we will address them.
And one more thing I wanted just to mention about Israel, and then I want to hear from you, because I want to learn from you as well.
Yeah.
Is that it's unlike the United States, where you have these independent living facilities that then you can segue into assisted living and more full-time care. That doesn't exist in Israel as a construct, meaning there are individual places, but people are sort of if they buy into one of these independent living, that when they need more help, they'll be able to transition. And no, you have to start all over again. You have to find a nursing home. You have to pay privately if you need that. Some places will let you have someone live with you, like a foreign worker, like a live-in caregiver, and some will not. So it's also an important thing to take into account.
And I'm just wondering, do you know anything about what we call here Kihila Tomechet? It's like
sure, for sure.
What is that? I guess that's called like a supportive community. What is that in English?
I'm going to go with supportive community. Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk about that for 1 minute? Because I think that's an interesting concept.
It is. It's very interesting. It came through the Joint and Eshel, which is like these nonprofit organizations that work with the government. Now they're in almost all the major cities in Israel and a lot of the smaller towns as well. It's basically like you pay in a membership. They have it for they have it for people with special needs. They have it for mental health, and they have it for older people, where you pay in a membership and then you get a social worker, like access to a social worker and access to, again, an avbayit. I want to say janitor, but that's not really what it is. I don't know, a handyman, as it were.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, a handyman. So come change the light bulb, Now it's a fantastic theoretical concept, I think. Also, they do groups. I mean, they were meeting in person, and then COVID happened, and but they have support groups, they have activities. It's very dependent on the community that you live in, because now they're run by different groups. So, and how well it runs really depends on where you live. But I for sure encourage people to look it up. And if people are interested in that for their town, they can write me directly and I can tell them whether or not there's a group. Some, like Jerusalem, they have English speaking groups.
Yeah.
So
but is that for people with dementia? I don't think that's
no.
Right?
No, that is not the answer for people. No, that's for people who are older and maybe live by themselves. Exactly, live a little help, or they need some guidance about services, but I would not recommend that for somebody who's like with a dementia diagnosis. No, the level of support you need is
That's what I thought. I just wanted to
Yeah.
check. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
stuff. Okay, so I'm going to talk for just a couple minutes about memory. I just want to give some
I know you could
practical.
like talk for 5 days and not stop.
Yeah, exactly. I have 20 hours worth of content here. You all know I do my signature course where we go through all the techniques and all the lifestyle factors to prevent dementia. So, I have lots of content, but I want to talk for a minute about the normal versus abnormal. So yes, misplacing your keys and going to the fridge and opening it and saying, what did I come for? That's the name of one of my webinars. And there is a normal aspect to that. If it's happening once in a while and you're still functioning and you're still independent, you can still do everything you used to do. And I have actually a whole webinar on this called What Did I Come to the Fridge For? And I explain in there that that's really about focus and attention. So the first thing I tell people when they're noticing memory loss is I want you to pay attention to whether it's your focus and attention, meaning when you can't remember something, I want you to stop and ask yourself, did I even pay attention to this in the first place? Because if you put your keys down while you were talking on the phone, and then you say, I can't remember where my keys are, that is not a memory problem. So that is step number one, okay? And I have a whole webinar on this. After that, when you start to feel, a loss, whether it's on the tip of your tongue or whether you can't remember the name or something, the very first thing you do is deep breath, because your brain needs oxygen. And sometimes a couple deep breaths just brings that memory right to you. Obviously, we're talking about not serious memory loss, right? When it gets more serious, no matter, breathing doesn't help. But when you're starting out and you're starting to get nervous about that memory loss, take a few deep breaths, because when you're like this, when you're contracted and your fists are clenched and your jaw's tight, and your brain has no oxygen, you're not going to be able to remember anything. So you got to breathe it out, center, take a few deep breaths, cleansing, relaxing breaths. And then often the memory comes to you. And then you're like, okay, I'm okay. But what's important is also what you say to yourself. Like when you start to forget, do you say, oh, I'm such an idiot. What's wrong with me? I'm getting so old. I can't remember that. Because guess what? If you say that to yourself, then you can't. But if you say, I got this, it'll come, that name will come back to me in a minute or a day, or I have a tool or technique that Rena taught me or that I learned in a book, and then you're empowered to do something about it. But the negative self-talk is so damaging, not only in memory, in every area of our life, but I'm relating it to memory. So breathing, positive self-talk is important. And then I want you to notice how often is whatever's happening that's bothering you, your memory loss, how often, how pervasive is it? And how much is it interfering with your daily functioning? And this is the criteria for how serious it is, right? So if you tell me once a month you can't find your keys, I'm going to say you're really doing okay. If you tell me 6 times a day you can't find your keys and you can't get out the door to your doctor's appointment and you're missing appointments because you keep misplacing your keys, and you really can't even pay attention to it and you can't find them, and you can't even remember the doctor's appointment, then you're not functioning the way you need to. And that's more serious. So this is, it's subjective. It's not like, it's very hard to put exact numbers on anything, which is why we do things like the mini mental and the mocha, because that puts numbers on it, even though, like you said, that's like for down the line. But what I tell people is, how much is it interfering with your daily functioning? So if you are bothered by it and you can't function the way you'd like to, go check it out. Like you said, go to a neurologist, a memory clinic, a geriatrician. I also do memory assessments. And check it out.
Good to know.
And see where you're holding, Sometimes it's other factors. It's not always dementia. Sleep apnea causes memory loss. Infections cause memory loss. Lack of vitamin B cause memory loss. There's so many things lifestyle-wise we can do to help us feel better. Even if there is something more serious going on, the lifestyle factors still help. So for example, exercise. When you exercise, physical exercise, what does it do to your brain? It grows new brain cells. It's neurogenesis. It produces BDNF, which is the brain's growth factor. So I don't care if you're 40 or 80 and experiencing memory loss or worried about your brain, you got to exercise. Now, what you can do and what's safe for you and what pain you have, you got to discuss it with a doctor and a PT, a personal trainer. But I highly recommend people, especially if you're older and you don't really know where to start with exercise, or you want to do more strength training, let's say, hire a personal trainer, even for a few sessions, to get you motivated, to teach you what to do, what's healthy for you, what's not healthy for you. We don't want anyone getting hurt exercising. So it's very important to do it right.
Right.
But what I want you to know is that when you exercise your body, you are growing new brain cells. And even with people with dementia should be exercising, because it's still healthy for the body and the brain. So it's very, very important at every stage and age to exercise physically, because it literally grows the brain. So that's really important. That's something you can do. Like, that is empowering. Like, I can go for a walk every day. I can't guarantee anyone that they're going to get or not get dementia. But if you walk every day, you're going to be better off no matter where you are. You know, if you take a half-hour walk every day, also the sun, the vitamin D is good for the brain, the air, the seeing people. Like, we underestimate the value of being outside, being in nature, getting air, sun, and seeing people. And I think maybe we do understand it more now after 2 years of being shut in, and we see the damage it's done. So now we need to take advantage. We have knowledge. We know that we got to get out every day. We got to see people. It's good for our brains. People that stay socially active live longer. People that volunteer stay more cognitively intact. There's amazing research on this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's very important that I didn't mention diet, but diet, exercise, sleep, education, cognitive challenging, stimulation. I mean, each of these I have a whole webinar on, right? Let's talk for 1 second about stimulation of your brain. If you sit all day and stare at 4 walls, your brain is going to atrophy no matter what. Your brain is a muscle and needs to be used. You know the adage, use it or lose it, use it or lose it. What does that mean? Find things that are fun, that you enjoy doing, that are engaging. Learn something new every day. It could be a class in the shul, in the synagogue. It could be a lecture in the matnas, the community center. It could be online. Everything is available online, from my memory improvement courses to yoga, to meditation, to how to use your phone. There's all sorts of platforms and websites out there where you can learn anything, and most of them are free. A lot of it is free. So I encourage you to stay cognitively active no matter what. Even if you get a diagnosis of dementia, or your loved one gets a diagnosis of dementia, stay physically, socially, and cognitively stimulated, because you have a much better chance of holding on and staying sharper longer. I love this story about a math professor. He was 77, and he went to the neurologist and said, you know, I'm starting to feel a little like my memory's going. 77-year-old math professor. And they did all these tests, and they saw, whoa, they scanned, and his brain was like, had all the telltale signs of Alzheimer's, but he wasn't manifesting Alzheimer's. And this is where they came up with the concept of cognitive reserve. Cognitive reserve is almost like it's a buffer to aging. So that guy, his brain was showing Alzheimer's, but he wasn't. Why? Because he was a math professor. He was still teaching. He was still using his brain. He was still so engaged at 77. And that's why I encourage people to stay very socially, physically, and cognitively stimulated. If you need help how to do any of that, you know, me and Aviva are good. We both can help you figure out how, what, where, when to do that. So that's it. So with normal versus abnormal, it's really about evaluating what you talked about before, executive functioning. Can I still do all my ADLs myself? Can I still make decisions? Can I still
activities of daily living?
Activities of daily living. Yeah, ADLs are activities of daily living. Can I take care of myself? Are other people noticing it? Again, this is
Are other people noticing? Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into this question, but I'll give you just like in extreme examples. But it is normal to misplace your keys once in a while. It is not normal to pick up your keys and say, what do I do with these? Right? Or it's normal to if you're still driving and you sort of pass the exit that you're supposed to take, like because you're daydreaming. I think that happens to all of us once in a while. But if that's happening very often, that's not normal. Or if you're driving and you're like, oh, I don't know which exit to take. That's
right. You can't remember how to get home.
Right. That's much more serious.
Yeah.
But usually small things happen till it gets to that point.
True.
People like to ignore it. I don't like people to panic every time they have like one little memory lapse. On the other hand, it's an overall evaluation, and you can bring in professionals to help you with that. So for example, it is normal to like, oh my gosh, what's that name? What's that name? What's that word? Right? It's on the tip of the tongue. That happens as we get older, especially if you're tired or stressed or don't have enough air in you, right? But if that's happening very often, then go for a memory assessment and see if there's anything going on. So that's just like an overall general answer to the normal versus abnormal. I do actually have like sort of a checklist. Again, it's general, but like a PDF checklist. Anyone who joins my email list, I think most of you are on it and most of you know this, but anyone who's not on my email list, if you join my email list, you go to renayukowski.com. I'll put it in the chat. I'll put it under the Facebook video, renayukowski.com. And if you just join my email list, you automatically get this PDF of normal versus abnormal.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I want to say, oh, okay, yeah, I keep talking. I could talk and talk. One more thing I want to say, and then I'm going to ask Aviva for any closing remarks. For any of you that are struggling with names, so I am offering a 2-part masterclass called You Name It, and I teach the techniques to remember names. It's just 2 parts, an hour and a half and an hour and a half, total of 3 hours, starting on Monday. This is not for people with dementia. This is for people that are still very socially active, even people that are working. I'm actually doing it for, I want to say younger crowd, but I'm not putting an age on it, but it's for people that, even business people, entrepreneurs, that want to remember the names of their customers, clients. I know we have people listening to this like that. And I've had younger people take this masterclass, teachers, principals that need to remember a lot of names, and it's very helpful to them. So it's called You Name It, and I will put the link to that as well under this video. And anyone that wants to join me, hop on board. We're starting on Monday, please God. So I hope this was helpful to you. Aviva, do you have anything else you wanted to say, add in, or tell us how people can reach you?
That's what I was going to say, right, is how people can reach me. So I'm on Facebook. You can type in Aviva Yoselis, or you can do Healthadvize with a Z. I know it's spelled incorrectly, but that's what the name is. Or you can go to my website at healthadvize.com. I have a lot of resources there also for people like navigating Bituach Leumi, things to know in general about the healthcare system. You can send me an email through my site. People can also email me directly at Aviva, AVIVA at healthadvize.com. Just even, I have this particular issue. What do I do? I think my father had me anywhere in the process. You can for sure, people can reach out to me, and and I can either direct them where to go, or we can set up I always have a brief call with people to see how I can help them, if I can help them, etc. So people should for sure reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aviva, you are doing really, really amazing work. I admire you. And I thank you
yourself.
Thank you.
Yourself. It's very blessed work.
Thank you. I don't see any comments in the chat. If anyone who's on has comments, please put it in the chat. We will put, Aviva, I'm going to put your email in the comments under this video and my website, and people can reach out to us.
Fantastic.
And I hope this was helpful to all of you. Thank you, Aviva, for your time.
Thank you.
Wishing you lots of success.
Amen. To you as well.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.